broadcast on 102.9 ESPN Radio for Western Montana and across the state on SWX Television.
I like football!
Now, the 2017 Radio Sports Broadcaster of the Year on the show with back-to-back Montana Broadcaster Association awards for sports coverage and award-winning sports journalism. Here is Ryan Tutel and Colter Nuanez.
We already danced in the studio, so you know it's going to be a good Friday. You also know we're playing funk music. That means Regime Seabrook back in the house. Welcome in, Tutel Nuanez, 129 ESPN Missoula. Ryan Tutel, 7,737 miles away on the other side of the globe. Who knows? He might be melted by now. He might not be coming back. I don't know what he's doing. I haven't heard from him. I don't even hear from him when he's down the street from me. But Colter Nuanez in studio with Regime Seabrook, coming to you live from the Kurtz Polaris studios. Kurtz Polaris, 2904 West Broadway, as well as Highway 83 in Sealy. Online at KurtzPolaris.com. Go check out all their new off-road vehicles, all their new summer toys they got ready for you guys. Kurtz Polaris. If you want to find us online, check us out. 1029ESPN.com. There you got all sorts of info about our current and upcoming giveaways. You also got some of our content from SkylineSportsMT.com. And you also got a link to our new YouTube channel. Tommy Evans, the main man back there, playing these great beats for us. He's got us live on the internet as well as live right here on SWX Montana. So thanks so much for you guys that are tuning in on your television. If you want to give us a call today, do it. 329-1899. You're going to want to do it. We got our last Soul Skin gift card to give you guys. This one's the big one. $100. I know you haven't bought your mother a Mother's Day present yet, but we got you covered. So just stay tuned. First segment right off the top here. We're going to give it to you. The only catch is you're going to have to get here before 5 because we're closing at 5 o'clock, even though we'll be on the air right now until 6. And if you do get here a little past 5, I think we got some ways to work it out. Tommy will talk you through it. But either way, you got a $100 gift card from Soul Skin. So remember that number, 329-1899. Live stream, you can find that on the website, 1029ESPN.com. Stream is presented by Opportunity Bank. Opportunity Bank, your local bank, your opportunity. Let's take a look at what we got in the show today. Haven't talked to my main man Regime in a long time, so we got a lot of stuff to rap about. We're going to talk about the NFL, big news out of the NFL. Doug Baldwin, Cam Chancellor, both cut in Seattle. So basically we got the Russell Wilsons, and that's about it with the Seattle Seahawks. They got nobody of any sort of the Legion of Boom era left besides the quarterback. Telvin Smith, he's not going to play this upcoming season. I don't know if he's retiring fully. Seems like it's a little bit murky waters. Telvin Smith, probably the best player you've never heard of, one of the best inside linebackers in the NFL. Of course, we're going to talk about the NBA playoffs as well. We got track and field updates for you guys from the Greg Rice City Meet down at Missoula County Public Stadium yesterday, as well as the Big Sky Outdoor Championships at Dorn Blazer Field. Those rage on. The first full day of competition today. We're 3 days into that thing with the first full slate, and both the Montana Grizzlies men and women's teams sitting pretty darn good. Then we're going to talk about a couple other things, as we always do, a couple random things. Show Outlook brought to you by Lithia Ford of Missoula. Regime Seabrook, he's wearing his Friday pinks.
It's summer, man.
It's summer.
It's not summer, but it's like we talked about pre-broadcast. It's beautiful outside. It's green outside, but it's lacking some color. So I like wearing bright this time of year. So good day, kind sir.
It's so interesting the way the body is an instrument of acclimation, because it's only 65 out right now. Maybe creeping up towards 70 now that we're in the late afternoon. But I was sitting outside at the Big Sky Conference Outdoor Championships, dying, sweating, can't even handle it. I was thinking to myself, I wonder how hot it is. I was like, it's got to be like 85, 90 degrees. Nope, look at the phone. Nope, 64.
A balmy 64.
And then this will be, in 2 months, this will seem cool. So it's just, and then we're back into negative 20 in less than a year. So you never know. The ebbs and flows. Do you like the seasonality of Montana, though?
Yes and no. I like the, I love these long, sunny summer days. But it's hard. Sometimes it's a hard gauge of time. Like being from back east, you had exactly 3 months of every season. You knew what you were getting exactly for 90 to 96 days, every 96 days. But it's hard. But you know what? We're human. We acclimate. We assimilate to some degree. I'm okay with it, man.
The Montana thing, though, the invariability of it. sometimes the summer might last all the way until mid-October, and sometimes the winter might last until the first week of May.
It's crazy. It goes from one extreme to the next, but you know what, man? It toughens you up. It gives you that nice callus.
No doubt. We got to love it. Well, let's talk some NFL first and foremost. I do want to ask you a little bit about some draft stuff, but first we got to talk about the two big news of the day. I was watching the NBA playoffs last night, and the bottom line pops up, and Doug Baldwin, Cam Chancellor, both out in Seattle, both released by the Seattle Seahawks. The other big piece of news, Telvin Smith, inside linebacker for the Jacksonville Jaguars, perhaps the best, one of at least, I would say Luke Kuechly, Bobby Wagner, and Telvin Smith, probably the three best inside linebacker. And maybe Mobley, what's his first name? Went to Alabama. Regardless, I think those guys, CJ Mosley. I think those guys are the best inside linebackers in the league. Telvin Smith, a little bit overshadowed because there is some other guys on the Jacksonville that get a lot of headlines, namely Jalen Ramsey, Calais Campbell. But he said he's not playing football in 2019. Not officially retired, but he's not going to play football. And we've seen this a little bit more prevalently now, guys walking away from the game before they even turn 30. And I think it truly shows you how hard the game is on you. But let's start with the Seahawks, guys, because that's obviously really impactful for people around here. I know there's a lot of Seahawks fans that listen to this show. And Doug Baldwin, a good player who has risen to a next level of stardom because of his personality, his level of social advocacy.
Absolutely.
And Cam Chancellor, obviously one of the biggest pure freaks in the NFL, one of the hardest hitting guys, one of the biggest safeties you'll find in the league. So what'd you think when you heard these two guys got cut?
It was sad. I'm not a Seahawks fan, but I am fan of eras of guys, and it's sad to see that era of Seattle Seahawks football lore come to a close. The Legion of Boom is legionless. They are forever gone from that. And then it's also hard seeing a good guy like a Doug Baldwin get cut. You know, he's leaving there as probably the top one or two receiver in the history of the club in various categories. And, he gave his all. Never really had that complimentary receiver opposite for his game to evolve past where it was, and it's just it's kind of a bittersweet thing, but it just shows you the continual business side of everything.
The Seahawks have basically made a statement that, without saying anything, that they have full, unwavering confidence in their ability to develop players because they last offseason, within the last 2.5, 3 year window, you're talking about not offering Earl Thomas a long-term contract, getting rid of Richard Sherman, getting rid of Brandon Browner, getting rid of KJ Wright, getting rid of trading Frank Clark this offseason, on down the line.
Cleaning house.
And I think that, number one, that's the side effect, the repercussion of when you give a guy the contract they just gave Russell Wilson. Once you pay the quarterback,
can't pay anyone else.
You got to restructure the entire roster. But also, I think that, I think coming into last year, everybody thought, the Seahawks would be down on defense because they got rid of all these guys, and they weren't. They were just fine on defense. I think they are truly confident they can develop a guy like Shaq Griffin into being a corner like Richard Sherman. They're confident they can develop whoever it might be, Barkevious Mingo, whoever it might be on their roster. But what do you think of that element? The fact that they had such an identity, they had more of an identity than any defense in football, and now it's going to be a completely brand new thing. But it seems like, on one hand, that is the way of the NFL, but on the other hand, the Legion of Boom had such brand name recognition in the NFL. So it's kind of a give and take, but it seems like if they haven't proven it yet, they're out to prove something.
Yeah, it's for me, I love what you said moments ago. It's the ebb and flow. It's every 10 years this is going to happen. 10 years ago it was the Ravens defense. Before that it was Big Blue. Before that it was the Steel Curtain. Like, it's just, you can just keep going back every 10 years, and there's always this one group of dudes for one or two, a couple of different teams within the league, and it is what it is. What it shows me is the mark of time. That's what it shows me. It makes it makes me a little sad to realize that, wow, that genre of guys, that 10-year evolution of football in the Pacific Northwest, it's done because I think there's two guys, Russell Wilson and someone else left on that team.
Bobby Wagner.
Three guys. Bobby Wagner. I forget there's one other guy on the team that's from that Super Bowl championship. Other than that, the guys are just gone, and it's sad, but it's also there's something really cool about it too, because now there'll be something else that we get to see. They'll be the dawn of something new. They'll be the new, something flashy or something dominant or something intimidating that we will all talk about in the next, 3 to 5 to 7 to 10 years.
We're
And
also a testament to Pete Carroll, right?
Oh, absolutely, man. Absolutely. That's just Pete Carroll is, I think, so much more underrated than people give him credit for. A lot of that is he's in the cool, laid-back Pacific Northwest, and the media market is different there. Not to say that it isn't big. It's just it isn't as flashy as, say, in L.A. or Chicago or Miami or New York. Underrated guy. Great system so far.
First of all, I misspoke. KJ Wright's still in Seattle. But I also think it's interesting that we live out west, so sometimes you just live insularly. You only think of it from your own little bubble, but we're a long ways from a lot of places out here. And Seattle's a long ways from a lot of pro sports towns. All the other West Coast teams sort of are too. And I think it's very interesting that some of the most distinct cultures in the NFL have been on the West Coast. The Seattle Seahawks have a distinct, almost college-like culture, as do the San Francisco 49ers, whereas then you have the teams like your New York Giants, not so much lately because of the dysfunctionality of the franchise, but the New York Giants, the Pittsburgh Steelers,
absolutely,
the Philadelphia Eagles that are very professional. They are professional.
Absolutely.
We are running this like a business. We are running this like the empire that it is. The Dallas Cowboys, Washington Redskins. I mean, they're multi-billion-dollar corporations that operate like that, even from a personnel standpoint, whereas Pete Carroll has cultivated this almost college-like locker room. And I think that's one of the reasons why maybe you can have some overturn like they have and stay good. I'm just wondering now, though, where the Seahawks turn. What are they going to look like, and are they going to be good? Because when you lose so many of these brand-name players, I just wonder where it leaves them. Did you think it was justified, or do you think it was a mistake for them to pay Russell Wilson like they did?
Hard to tell, man. It's Russ is the franchise for them.
Sure.
But there's parts of it. Can he get them back to that next level? But they haven't put the pieces around him either, offensively speaking, that is. And for me, it's a push pull tug kind of thing. Is he worth it in that situation for that team in this part of the country? Absolutely. But I feel that there's a little bit of overreach and overpay for him. But again, who's coming out of college that's going to give you what he gives that team? Who's coming out of college in the next 2 to 3 to 4 years that's going to give you that personality and that face of a franchise? They didn't just pay for a player; they paid for a face as well.
Doug Baldwin's going to be one that Cam Chancellor. People kind of saw that coming because Cam Chancellor was tweeting and questioning his own health.
Yep.
The neck injury last year, he didn't play.
Justified.
Last year. I think he was probably going to walk away from the game anyways. I think this release actually probably allows him to retire as a Seahawk, which, as he should, that's cool.
Right.
Doug Baldwin, he was hurt all year last year too, but I don't think Doug Baldwin's going to be done. But he's going to be one where people are going to miss him. You mentioned probably one of the more productive receivers the Seahawks have ever had. I'd say Steve Largent's number one, but
absolutely number one.
Doug Baldwin's definitely in the mix. Number 2, 3, right up there.
Absolutely.
In franchise history, but more impactful even because of the platform that he was able to build himself and attain in Seattle, and the way that he was an outspoken guy, a social advocate, a person that's talked about maybe sensitive, hot button, racially charged issues. So this is what I want to ask you. We have seen now the galvanization from the American public of a lot of guys that have spoken out and the support that they've received, not necessarily by and large, but in certain pockets. But we've also seen a pretty definitive trend in the NFL where if you are a social advocate, if you are someone that does speak out, if you are someone that does disrupt the status quo, NFL owners, NFL franchises, they are not interested in your services. It took forever for Eric Reid to get on a team. Colin Kaepernick, he's still nowhere to be found. And some other guys that have been in that mix, they've either had to bite the bullet and kind of conform or be kind of on the outside looking in. Do you feel like Doug Baldwin's going to have some suitors out there, or is his personality going to hold him back from finding another team?
It's going to be the blessing and the curse for this young man in the realm of his outspokenness. Pioneers get all the arrows.
No doubt.
Okay, so him being a pioneer and talking about civil injustice is going to kind of put barbs out there for teams, but his savviness, what he can bring to the locker room, that's going to be inviting. And because he isn't afraid to do the right thing, that infects a locker room. So depending upon the media market, and then also what a team is in need of at where he is with his age and his injuries, I still think he can be an effective person. But he's kind of he's iffy right now for a lot of different people.
It's ironic, isn't it, that internally in an NFL locker room, Doug Baldwin would come in and be a leader. He would be a dude. Everybody would look to him. Hardly anybody that if he goes to almost any team in the league, hardly any team would make him an outsider internally. But so you're worried about the 53 guys in the locker room or the 55,000 people in the stands? It's this inevitable balancing act, right? He could definitely galvanize your locker room and help you win.
Absolutely.
But how many people that are paying money are going to be turned off by his soapbox mentality? I find that so ironic and honestly unfortunate.
Mm. Well, it remains to be seen. He may have to reinvent himself for the same exact reasons that we are pontificating upon. For me, it's when a person gets to this point in their career, it's sort of like me. I'm 45 years old. Say I had to get a new job after I'm done with this year at the school. There's a part of me that's going to have to reinvent myself.
Sure.
For a couple of different reasons. I'm older, right? So I have to appease to someone who may now be 15 years my junior, but my immediate supervisor. So there are adjustments that one has to make in order to promote themselves, in order for them to want to be procured by a company or an organization, or in this case, a sports club. So we'll see. And Doug Baldwin, he's smart and he's savvy, man. We'll see what he does with himself.
No doubt. Tutel Nuanez, 129 ESPN Missoula, broadcasting to you from the Kurtz Polaris studios. Coulter Nuanez here. Ryan Tutel in the Philippines. Regime Seabrook in studio with me. Before we get into this Telvin Smith stuff, you got some free stuff for you. Got a Soul Skin gift card for you. They're giving facials, all sorts of spray tans, all sorts of spa greatness for your mother. And I got a $100 gift card from Soul Skin right now. All you got to do is give us a call, 329-1899. Come on air with us and tell us why your mother is special to you. And then swing on by the station, get that gift card before the weekend hits. 329-1899, $100 Soul gift card. Give us a call right now and give us why your mother is special to you. The other big news, Telvin Smith from the Jacksonville Jaguars. He is taking 2019 off. He has not officially retired. He said yesterday, I kind of put football on the side. I think that football to me is an afterthought right now. I really believe in my heart that Telvin thinks that Telvin knows that we're here to support him. Oh, excuse me, this is from Doug Moreau. That's the Jacksonville Jaguars coach. But Telvin Smith said that he took time away from football to focus on himself, his health, and his family. And that says to me that maybe having some second thoughts about the brutality of the game, maybe going through some mental stuff. But Telvin Smith's only 28 years old, slated to make $9.75 million. It's a $12.56 million cap hit for the Jacksonville Jaguars. But if you don't know Telvin Smith, I'll tell you this. Telvin Smith is one of, if not the best, inside linebackers in the entire National Football League.
Thumper.
An absolute beast. Runs sideline to sideline as well as anybody in the entire NFL. And you just have to wonder, because we've seen this more often than we ever have before with guys like Patrick Willis, Calvin Johnson, a variety of other guys walking. Rob Gronkowski, not even 30 years old. You know, some of the superstars in the game walking away early because of the toll it takes on the game. And I know Telvin Smith, for guys that follow the NFL, is a name for people that maybe are just fantasy fringe watchers, or you know, you just watch your favorite team on Sundays. You might not know this guy, but this is incredibly impactful because this guy, he has the heart and soul of the Jacksonville Jaguars defense. Not the guy that gets all the headlines, but the guy that gets them lined up. And he's an incredibly productive player. He had 100 solo tackles last year, 134 total tackles, and he stuffed the stats, you know, forced fumbles, sacks, interceptions, all that.
Scott.
Before we get more into this Telvin Anderson, though, go to the Rankish Brothers RV Hotline. Welcome in Scott to the show. Scott, what's going on Friday?
Oh, not too much.
Where are you at? What are you doing? You in town?
Yep, in town, doing the work.
Very good, very good. Well, got a Soul Skin gift card for you for $100. You can use it on your wife or your mother, whichever one you prefer for Mother's Day. All you got to do is just say something sweet about the mothers in your life.
Well, I'm going to use it for my wife. She deserves it because she takes care of me when I have a long day at work, and I want to take care of her. I love her very much.
It's excellent, Scott. We appreciate the call. Happy Mother's Day to you, your wife, your mother, and all the other mothers out there. Give Tommy your information. Swing on by the studio. We'll have that gift card for you before we close up shop here in about 45 minutes at Missoula Broadcasting Company. But have a great weekend, my friend.
Thank you. You too.
Soul Skin hooking it up for Mother's Day. $250 worth of gift cards we gave away this week, so we really appreciate them being a part of this.
I want to know where Scott was from.
Yeah, right.
Woo.
Yeah, he's got
a little
twang.
I like that twang.
That's good. That's good. Well, so Telvin Smith retired. I mean, obviously this is a surprise, but what are your thoughts on just a premier player who's only 28 years old walking away from the game when he's at the top of his game?
See, I think that this is a common mistake that many people in America make when it comes to athletes retiring at 28. People, these young men and these young women are in such prominent, galvanized positions. They are the closest thing to modern day gladiators and demigods that we will ever get to. And when people walk away from that glamour, and they walk away from that money, and they walk away from that fame, we see that, but we don't ever talk about what they're walking away from or what they're trying to walk towards. And I think that a lot of these people, they're burnt out. They've been doing this. You know, a guy that's in the NFL at 28 years old, to have gotten there, he's already been doing this job for 20 years straight. He's been playing hard since 8 years old. And anytime you do something for 20 years, I don't care who you are, you're tired. You're burnt out. You know, you're tired of being on planes and in motels. You're tired of, you know, being told what to eat, how to look, where to dress. You got to show up. And then the physical impact of the game. I didn't play in the pros, but I played enough football and I played long enough. My body hurts. So I can only imagine what a thumper like that feels like come Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday after a long week of practice. That takes its toll. And then you start talking about family. Family's everything, man. Family is everything. And for the cats that want to be with their families, go for it. Who are we to judge? But again, it goes back to these people who are in beautiful jobs that make these over exorbitant amounts of monies and live these quote unquote glamorous lives. We see that, and then we instantly, why would you want to walk away from that? Because a guy like you or me or my wife or any of our sisters out there who take time off of work to go be with family, you know what we all say? Go for it. Go take care of your family. But when it's someone like that, or someone says, I want to retire from being a musician, or I don't want to act anymore, it's why? Why would you do that? It's an interesting parallel in life.
It is an interesting parallel in life. The other interesting parallel is that so often when players walk away from the game, whether it's by choice or they're forced to, or father time takes its toll, they have such a hard time with the absence of the locker room, the teammates in their lives.
Right.
So it is sort of a double-edged sword, right? Because you do want to prioritize your health and your future, but you're never going to be able to replace the camaraderie that comes with a contact sport like football.
Absolutely, man. Some of my best friends are guys that I played with to this day. Spoke to one of them the other night. It's like I haven't spoken to him for about 3 months. Pick up the phone. It's like I spoke to him 30 minutes ago.
No doubt. NFL draft stuff. First of all, what did you think of? I know why you're scoffing. For those that don't know, Regime Seabrook is a New York Giants fan. Before we get to that, what did you think of the last time you were in here? We did a segment about just the polarizing figure that is Kyler Murray, and
yes,
there was a moment in time where I think that no one thought Kyler Murray was going to be a first-round pick, let alone the number one overall pick. And then all of a sudden it evolved into him being the surefire, no doubt, number one pick, and then that came to fruition. What did you think of the Arizona Cardinals taking a risk on a 5'10" quarterback?
It was smart because of the relationship there. Sometimes a relationship supersedes role on a team. If you have a relationship with your coach, your role sometimes expands subconsciously. So for me, from that perspective, from a psychological and sociological perspective, brilliant move. The other thing is you get rid of Rosen and you actually get something in return for him. Like you're building for the future and you're building for the right now moments. I thought it was a brilliant moment for the Arizona Cardinals from a business perspective. It's going to be something that sells jerseys. It's going to be something that sells tickets. It's going to be something that gets the Cardinals kind of back on a national map just because of how exciting this young man is purported to be. the other aspects of the draft were interesting. Anytime the Redskins look like they made power moves and your team didn't, it's an interesting draft. Anytime you trade away potential future Hall of Famers for a box of Scooby snacks and a pack of tissues, it's an interesting draft, no matter how bad it makes you want to cry internally. It was an interesting draft.
So the New York Giants get rid of Odell Beckham in the offseason.
Ridiculous.
And then they have 3 first-round picks. And I think that people thought maybe they got a steal at 17 with Dexter Lawrence, but that is offset by drafting Daniel Jones, a guy who almost no one had even in the first round. Probably the highest anybody had him was maybe at 17, which they had the 17th pick. Instead, they draft Daniel Jones out of Duke with the number 6 pick overall. The looks on the faces of people around Nashville that were wearing Giants jerseys look exactly like your face looks right now.
Right now, perplexed.
What were you watching the draft live?
But when I ended it soon thereafter. I ended it soon thereafter,
and that was it.
And I was baffled. I was shocked. Let's talk about it. Daniel Jones, God bless him, probably a really nice kid, obviously smart, went to Duke University, but also was a non-scholarship football player. Here's the other thing. When you're getting beat 55-10 by the likes of Wake Forest, I don't care who you are or who you don't have around you, you're not worth a 6th pick in the first round by a franchise as historically elite as the New York Giants have been. Number 3, the only thing I draft out of the 6th spot, out of the ACC, is point guards and wings. That's it. I don't draft anything that high for a quarterback, especially. Point guards and wings out of the ACC. Quarterbacks, Big Ten, Pac-10, SEC, dependent on the team. I am appalled because this guy would have been there at 17. He would have been there at the 2. He would have been there in round 2, possibly 3 and or 4. He has the demeanor of Eli, which is what they want.
Yeah, he was played for David Cutcliffe at Duke. David Cutcliffe, famously the quarterbacks coach at Tennessee, then the head
family
coach
tree
at Ole Miss, and he coached both Manning brothers. That's why they wanted him.
Right, which now has its merits because if this guy is able to promote a guy to an organization like the Giants for them to take him at 6, he might have something that we are well unaware of. But again, you played at Duke, you're getting thumped by Wake Forest and Virginia on the regular, which means it's Dave Brown Jr. 25 years later, the last time the Giants took a quarterback out of the then, I think it was like 1994 Plan B via free agency supplemental draft. How's that for some history? We'll be right back there, throwing and slinging interceptions.
And the guy that they did not take, who went the pick after, Josh Allen from Kentucky, perhaps the biggest freak we've seen in the draft since Javon Curse. I mean, the guy's 6'4", 6'5", 275 pounds. He ran a 4.6 flat, did 29 reps, 10'10" broad jump, blew the combine to smithereens. He's long, he's lean. He was the SEC Defensive Player of the Year. He had Kentucky, of all teams, in the top 10 in the polls towards the end of the year. They finished top 25, which in itself is a testament to his play and their great season. But
that's who I wanted.
I mean, that's who everybody wanted. I thought he was good enough to be the number 1 overall pick, and he goes all the way to 7, which I think, by the way, side note, mean pick for the Jacksonville Jaguars. They get a speed rusher to pair with Calais Campbell. Look out. But this is going to be an absolutely telling pick for the New York Giants because if Daniel Jones ends up being a franchise guy, they'll look like the smartest team, and that will be one of the smartest picks that's ever been made. On the other side, though, if the kid's a complete bust and Josh Allen is an all-pro, now all of a sudden we're going to be talking about top 10 lists where this was one of the biggest misses in draft history.
Well, because the Giants could have had the ability to pat both sides of the bread, butter both sides of the bread. You could have got the quarterback you wanted and the defensive guys you wanted, and kept a lot of those 2nd and 3rd and 4th round draft picks that you winded up giving up later on day 2 of the draft. Anyway, the brain trust or the lack thereof, known as Gettleman, is perplexing. But you know what? Historically, this is how he rolls. We can go back to
that's not working out so good lately.
What's that?
That's not working out so good lately.
Buddy, Josh Norman, anybody?
Right.
Greg Olsen, anybody?
Yeah.
Like we can talk about that all day. That's just gaff after gaff. It's a Gaffelman instead of Gettleman.
Tutel Nuanez, 129 ESPN Missoula. Colter Nuanez in studio with Regime Seabrook. Hey, we're going to talk about some of the best track and field marks in high school around the state. Also give you an update on the Greg Rice City meet. But first, got to tell you a little bit about the Coeur d'Alene Resort. Ryan Tutel and I went over there over Easter weekend, played 18 holes of golf. Spectacular course, immaculate condition. The course layout is tremendous. They got this stretch of 3 par 3s and 4 holes. I almost hit an ace on one after hitting it in the bushes in front of me, so it would have been a hole in 3 technically. But I almost aced one of those. But they're really fun. It's a really great course. You get a caddy. He chases down your ball for you. It's almost like a professional golf experience on a professional course. Go out there. You hit driving range balls into the lake. They float. And if you do the stay and play, you get to stay in the hotel afterwards or before, whichever you want. Stay in the hotel, get up early, ride the boat across the lake, get over to the resort, or play your round of golf, go play it, and then go stay at the resort. $10 million renovation of that resort last fall and winter, and it's an amazing, amazing place to hang out. Only 160 miles from here, only a 2-hour and 15-minute drive over at Coeur d'Alene Resort. So go check them out. Play the golf course, stay at the resort, have some fun at CDA. Greg Rice, Missoula City meet happened yesterday, Missoula County Public Stadium. Big Sky has absolutely dominated the inner city track meet for the last 20 years. The Eagles did not win on either side. More next.
Les Schwab is proud to introduce 2 of our best tires ever, just in time for summer. There's our exclusive Reputation, a high-mileage premium passenger tire we believe has the quietest, most comfortable ride ever. Or our exceptionally quiet and smooth all-season traction tire, the Open Range AT. Get $50 off alignment when you purchase a set of 4 Open Range AT or Reputation tires. Book an appointment today at leschwab.com. Les Schwab Tires. Doing the right thing matters. Cannot be combined with other offers. Limited time only. See details at leschwab.com.
On Russell, across from the fairgrounds.
No matter how far you may go, there's always one just down the road. Town Pump, who pump it up.
Town Pump knows it's a beer and wine type of day. That's why we're happy to offer Modelo 12-packs for $11.99. And we've got your wine covered with our Sutter Home 750-milliliter bottles for a low $3.99. Town Pump Food Stores, proud to be part of our community.
Town Pump, right down the road.
Hey folks, the best season of the year is upon us. That's right, it's tax return season, and there's one place to have the most fun and make that refund check stretch further than anywhere else, Selway Armory. Selway Armory has the largest selection of firearms, ammo, and accessories of anywhere around, and they have the expertise to go with it. It's not everywhere that you can shop local and save money, but Selway Armory will meet or beat any box store price, and your money stays in Montana. It's tax return time, so get more bang for your buck at Selway Armory. Visit online at selwayarmory.com.
More bedrooms, a big yard, better commute. Whatever your reason to buy a new home, it's the right reason. In a tough housing market, the smartest thing you can do is pre-qualify for a loan before you start looking. Farmers State Bank makes it easier than ever to start the loan process with online checklists, forms, and calculators. Your dream home is out there. Get started today at farmersebank.com. Farmers State Bank, an equal housing lender and member FDIC.
Hey everybody, Ryan Tutel, and I'm here with Josh of the Advocates Injury Law Firm. Josh, there's a lot of lawyers in this area. What makes you different?
At the Advocates, we primarily focus on injury cases. That gives us the experience and the knowledge to correctly evaluate your case and work with insurance companies and other attorneys so you get exactly what you deserve to make you whole again. We take really good care of our clients, and we're going to fight for every single dollar you deserve.
Call 640-4444 or online at montanaadvocates.com. There are a lot of lawyers. You deserve an advocate.
Hey, Tutel Nuanez here. Can't tell you how many times we've heard the face for radio joke since we came on SWX television, but it's been a fun endeavor so far.
And now our esteemed producer Tommy is pushing the envelope even further. We got our own YouTube channel.
That's right. If you want to watch us every day from your computer, your tablet, your cell phone, you can check out Tutel Nuanez on YouTube.
Tutel Nuanez, live every weekday from 4 to 6 in the afternoons on 102.9 ESPN Radio for Missoula, SWX Montana statewide, and now around the planet Earth on YouTube.
ESPN Missoula Sports Center.
Good afternoon. Erica McLeod, a champion once again. Colter Nuanez here. McLeod, Montana's peerless senior from Butte, Montana, posted dominant marks in the high jump on day 1 and the long jump on day 2 to extend her gap on the way to scoring 5,425 points in the women's heptathlon, enough to win her 5th overall multi-event Big Sky title and her 7th individual crown overall. McLeod set the Big Sky indoor record in the pentathlon earlier this spring, her 3rd indoor championship in the multis, but was a late scratch at nationals because of an injured calf. After 6 weeks off, she bounced back in resounding fashion to win the heptathlon for the 2nd time outdoors. Jansen Ziola and Jeree Main, finished 6th and 7th respectively to give the Lady Grizz the lead entering the first full day today. And on the men's side, in the men's decathlon, Montana sophomore Brendan Thurber Blazer capitalized on the no height from Portland State stud senior Dante Robinson in the pole vault to claim Thurber Blazer's first Big Sky Decathlon championship. Thurber Blazer had the top marks in the discus and the javelin on the way to 7,154 points, just 22 more than Montana State junior Wyatt Thompson-Saforin. Aiden Diggs and Josh Riley of Montana finished 3rd and 4th, respectively, to give the Grizz 21 points entering the first full day today. And finally, the Sentinel boys and the Hellgate girls of the City Track and Field Championships after wins of the Greg Rice meet. For more individual results, stick it right here at Tutel Nuanez. Welcome back, moving and grooving our way through a Friday. Ryan Tutel, he's over there melting in the Philippines. Regime Seabrook in studio with me, Colter Nuanez. We're broadcasting to you live. Kurtz Polaris Studios, 2904 West Broadway or Highway 83 in Sealy. Go check them out. They're rolling out all their fun stuff, their ATVs, their dirt bikes, their motorcycles, all their off-road vehicles. You can also check it out, KurtzPolaris.com. You want to check us out on Twitter? At Gus Tutel's probably not functioning right now, so don't worry about it. He's making himself a YouTube channel, but he's not uploading anything from the tropics down there in the Philippines. But we got all sorts of stuff for you on all the social medias, so hit us up on Facebook, /ESPN Missoula, on Twitter, at 1029ESPN, or you can find us on Twitter, at Skyline Sports MT. It's time for our Prep Extra, brought to us by Farmers State Bank. Farmers State Bank, make us your bank. Yesterday, the Greg Rice City Championship meet at Missoula County Public Stadium. Since Dan Nile took over as the track coach at Missoula Big Sky, the Eagles had won 26 out of a possible 32 city championships combined between the boys and the girls. Only 8 other championships split up between Sentinel and Hellgate over the last 18-plus years. And that changed yesterday. Sentinel, the boys, they win in resounding fashion. 98 points for the Spartans, 50 points for the Knights, and 33 points for the Eagles on the boys' side. On the women's side, Hellgate with 71 points to take the city title. Big Sky second at 60.5 points. And Sentinel third, 48.83. Interesting because the Spartans on the girls' side, the 2-time reigning Class AA champions, but they still have among the best athletes in the state. 2 of them, in fact, Lauren Hagen and Ashley McElmurray. Ashley McElmurray with a three-peat as a city champion yesterday. She wins the long jump, she wins the short hurdles, and she wins the long hurdles. Very, very impressive for the Nebraska commit who will go run in the Big Ten next year. And then Lauren Hagen, she is just in an absolute other world when it comes to triple jumping. She triple jumped 39.8.5, which is actually her worst mark this month because she's gone over 40 twice before. No female in the history of the state of Montana has ever triple jumped 40 feet. And you got 2 young ladies in Missoula Sentinel right now that broke 41 feet in Butte last weekend.
Man, the Hagen girl's ridiculous. The whole family.
She's only a junior.
She's only a junior, and you got to realize that when her brother Slade, former Loyola boy, was a year younger, he had committed to playing baseball and winded up at the U of O. Like
right.
And then Dad played back in the day in the Patriot League at Fordham University. Ridiculous. These 2 young ladies are outstanding.
Yesterday at that meet, Ashley McElmurray long jumped 18 foot 7 inches, which is her second best jump this year. And I'm serious, 7 minutes later, she doesn't even get a chance to warm up. It takes that long to jog over to the starting blocks. She goes out and runs the top time in the 100-meter hurdles, which, oh, by the way, was the 3rd fastest time in the state. Only the 3rd girl to break 15 seconds in the 100-meter hurdles.
Ridiculous.
Less than 7 minutes apart.
Ridiculous.
To put that, I mean, I don't think people understand how hard it is to have the explosion, the focus, the endurance, but also just the athletic diversity to be able to be a long jumper, a triple jumper, a short hurdler, and a long hurdler. The long jump, if you can run fast, you probably can long jump far. If you have good stop and start. A triple jump so much more about timing, but it's still explosion. Mm-hmm. A lot of times, long jumpers make good sprinters. They make good hurdlers, just like hurdlers sometimes make good short or make good long jumpers, make good triple jumpers.
Right.
Very few people can run the short hurdles and the long hurdles at the same time. The contrast between the endurance and the athleticism that takes is just insane. And the fact that Ashley McElmurray won the 300 hurdles later on in the day by a full 2 seconds, it's no wonder she's going to the Big Ten.
Well, it just shows you how mentally strong she is, because all the things that you're talking about are the physical components. To be able to mentally do gymnastics like that, to go from one mindset to the other, because all those things bring about a different mindset. Like the mindset of a basketball player is different than the mindset of a baseball player. To have the ability to physically, mentally, and emotionally shift gears like that gives credence to her as a human being. No. And again, that's Big Ten. There you go. You picked a good one.
Yeah, no doubt. Some other impressive marks. On the guys' side, Jaden Foster, from Missoula Sentinel, he swept the 100 and the 200. So he continues his great year. Mm-hmm. Craig Metler over at Missoula Sentinel is doing a great job.
Coach.
They have a very interesting sprint technique. They call their sprints during meets their actual conditioning days. They never run more than 30 or 40 meters at a time during practice. So then when it's time to go, then they can open up and really let it loose.
Full throttle.
And it's definitely paying off for them. I mean, if you're running 11 seconds or faster in the 100 meters as a high school boy, you're blazing. And they got a couple of them doing it. And definitely a competitive Greg Rice City Championship, but definitely a little bit disruption of the status quo because, like I said, Missoula Big Sky has definitely been the dominant track program in town. Mm-hmm. And different results yesterday. Sorry, I'm trying to get this page to load. The internet sometimes.
You're fine, bud. You're fine.
But I wanted to highlight one other. Maddie Provo, she ran a great 800 meters as well. And there's just a ton of really good athletes in this town, and I think it's most highlighted by just the fact that there's so many kids from Montana, especially females right now, that are amongst the national elite. Mm-hmm. With their times. I mean, Rylan Ort's thrown the javelin over 200 feet.
Ridiculous.
He's one of the top 10 in the country. You got several girls that have run under 5:10 in the mile, which is super
outstanding.
Elite. Ember Stratton and Elise Stearns from Hellgate, they were pacing at the city meet in the mile, and just a ton of really, really good athletes in the state of Montana right now. A ton of them right here in Missoula. So I think it's going to be interesting because I think that the Billings West girls are really stacked. They're gonna have a inside track at that state championship. But I mean, Hellgate and maybe Big Sky could be in the mix for a podium spot. If Sentinel can get healthy, they might be in the mix on the girls' side too. Billings Senior has a really good girls team in the AA ranks, and on the boys' side, Billings West is really good. But Missoula Sentinel's right there, man. Missoula Sentinel's they have athletes in multiple different disciplines. Missoula Sentinel is one of the best sprint corps in the state on the boys' side, one of the best throwers in the state on the boys' side. They just have to figure out a way to make up some points in the middle distance and the distance races. But if they can, it's going to be fun to watch because this is as wide open as I can remember it in the AA, and a ton of individual marks to watch too. Remember, in Montana high school track, you have to run the times at the state meets because that's where the regulations happen. That's where they know that it's going to be a certified time. But you got a bunch of girls, especially females, that are going to be threatening all-class records. Lauren Hagen set the all-class record in the triple jump last year, but her PR this year is 2.5, 3 feet better than that. So if she can replicate a 40-plus foot triple jump, that will be impressive. Delaney Bond from Bozeman. This girl is such a stud that she almost jumped 20 feet in the long jump. If she could do that, she'll shatter the all-class long jump record. But the first time she ever ran the 100 meters, she ran 12.2 flat. The fastest time in the state by almost 0.2 of a second. The first time she ever ran the race this season. So she has big things in her future as well, and then just a ton of standouts across the board. And also in the other ranks, too. And we'll get into that a little bit next week as we give you some of our divisional and state tournament primers. It is our Prep Extra presented to us by Farmers State Bank. Farmers State Bank, make us your bank. On the other side, we're going to talk a little bit more about youth sports because Regime's got some stuff to say. If you got kids in sports, stick around, support them. All they want to do is have you see them succeed. Tutel Nuanez, 102.9 ESPN Missoula.
Canyon River Golf Club is a must for any golfer in western Montana. Tucked away in a spectacular setting along the Clark Fork River in East Missoula, Canyon River offers one of Montana's best championship golf experiences. And Canyon River is happy to announce their new fleet of golf carts, which include the Shark Experience, an interactive GPS giving dynamic distances and touchscreen interaction to help you play your best. Plus, with Bluetooth, radio, and surround sound, you can enjoy yourself between holes too. Book online at CanyonRiverGolfClub.com. Missoula's best golf, Canyon River.
This is Mike Nugent with Berkshire Hathaway Home Services. Berkshire Hathaway provides Western Montana with full-time real estate professionals for you whenever you need us. Our reputation as the state's most knowledgeable and available real estate group has helped build unmatched trust in the Garden City and statewide. If you have been thinking of making a real estate move in the short or long term, give me a call. No pressure, no expectations. Just professional opinions and service at whatever pace you are comfortable with. Give me, Mike Nugent, a call today, 531-1802. And remember, every question is good to ask.
Hey folks, Ryan Tutel, and I'm here with Josh of The Advocates. Josh, do most injury accidents end up in court?
Luckily, most personal injury cases can be settled out of court through a fair negotiation with an insurance company. However, sometimes it is necessary. I'm prepared to do whatever it takes to get a fair settlement. Luckily, most personal injury cases can be settled out of court with a fair negotiation with the insurance company. However, I'm prepared to do whatever it takes to get the right settlement for you.
It's Josh at The Advocates, 640-4444, or online at montanaadvocates.com.
Alpine Touch is legendary around the state of Montana for providing delicious seasonings for every grilling occasion. Now, Alpine Touch offers so much more, from a savory new barbecue sauce to spicy pepper blends to tasty barbecue rubs. In addition to the classic, Alpine Touch has a variety of seasoning salts for whatever you need to spice up. Now that the holidays are over, Alpine Touch makes a perfect thank you gift to show your friends and relatives you love them. Alpine Touch, available at retail locations around Montana or online at alpinetouch.com. Alpine Touch, Montana's special spice.
At Opportunity Bank of Montana, they've been helping people with home loans for over 95 years. They're still here for you today with local lending professionals, local servicing, and a full range of real estate loan options and programs. It's your home and they're your hometown lender. Contact an Opportunity Bank mortgage lender today or visit them at opportunitybank.com. Your local mortgage lender, your opportunity. Member FDIC, Equal Housing Lender.
Tutel and Nuanez on 102.9 ESPN Radio for Missoula.
Tutel Nuanez, 129 ESPN Missoula, broadcasting to you live, Kurtz Polaris Studios. Kurtz Polaris, 2904 West Broadway, as well as Highway 83 in Sealy. Check them out, kurtzpolaris.com. You want to check us out, 129 ESPN Missoula, Facebook /ESPN Missoula, or SkylineSportsMT.com. Colter Nuanez is here. Regime Seabrook on the other side. Ryan Tutel, he's out. He's in the Philippines. Almost to the week countdown. This is the first of two Friday shows I'll do without him. We'll be all alone next week too. Maybe I can talk Mr. Pink into coming back in though, huh?
Actually, if I was in Reservoir Dogs, that would have been my name. I totally would have been Mr. Pink.
I love it. Well, maybe we can get you back in here one more time next week. And Tucker Sargent, I just saw him down at the Big Sky Conference Outdoor Track and Field Championships. He said he's excited to come in maybe once or even twice next week, so that'll be good.
I might be able to give you 2 days next week.
Woo.
I might look at the.
Don't tease me.
Hey, baby, you dig it the most. I just need to look at the old family calendar when I get home.
I love it. Well, let's talk some youth sports. You're involved in the community as much as anybody I know. That's the one thing I love about you. You're always giving back. You're always helping the kids out. Coaching, mentoring,
everything,
helping the kids that maybe are having a hard time. It's great.
Yes, sir.
And I think that's what we need. You know, there's a strong environment of advocacy going on right now in America, but also a lot of pushback against advocacy in America right now. And I think that there's a lot of volunteerism, but also people maybe going abroad to volunteer, and I think it's all good. If you're giving back, it's a great thing. If you're caring for your fellow man, if you're living the doctrine, it's great. But I think looking at our neighbors first and helping each other out in our communities is of paramount importance, and you do that a lot. But you were having a little burn earlier, just talking about youth sports and how a lot of times these parents are using it as a babysitter, maybe instead of an actual nurturing tool and a place where kids can achieve, but also where they can receive vindication and affirmation from those that they want it from the most.
Yeah, I think I have a finger in like every circle of athlete sports in Missoula, and I'm not going to name the sports, but over the past couple of weeks, been going to these events with my son and just making observations, because sometimes being a coach, you don't get, you're in it and you're of it sometimes, but when you get to be dad or mom or grandpa or whatever, you get to kind of sit back and observe and assess more. And what I've assessed is that there's a growing contingency of people that are using sports to, as you said, babysit their kids, talking to parents. Hey, your son did really great today at practice, and they'll be like, thank you, Mr. Seabrook, that's nice, but I don't really care if my son's good. I just need him to be occupied. And I'm thinking, this just came out of your mouth that you just want your kid to be occupied. Granted, sports is great, but so are piano lessons. And what I mean by that is, if you're going to put your kid into something or have them be involved with them. Because when little Timmy or when little Jessica hits their first double or triple or home run and they turn around and they're looking for you in the stands and you're not there, it doesn't feel as good. When they do something great at practice and they are getting cheered up not only by their mates but by their coach, and they're looking over to say, hey, where's mom or dad? Because I want them to know I did something right and you're not there. The looks on some of these kids' faces, it's like, thanks, coach, but no thanks. You know what I mean? Like I wanted that smile from my mom or my dad or whoever, and it just isn't there. So for the parents that are there and they're involved, and even for the ones that hover like bad waitresses and waiters, like helicopters, God bless you. But if you're going to be there, don't just put your kids into things just because you need them to be occupied. If they're going to be occupied, nature and nurture that. Don't just plug them in and hope they enjoy it or hope they get something out of it.
That was your Burn Street Bistro Burn of the Week.
Not necessarily a burn, because this is sort of a sensitive subject, but we had to get that in. Thanks, Burn Street, for being a sponsor.
Thank you.
We love it. Do you watch The Shop on HBO? LeBron James's Roundtable Uncut talk show?
No, man.
Man, of all the people I know in the whole world, you'd be the one that would love it the most. It is awesome. LeBron James basically just has Maverick Carter, his right-hand man, and a couple other of his good friends. They have various members of pop culture into a barbershop, and it's just like an urban black barbershop, like you've probably experienced a lot in your life. And but it's not just African American guys in there. They do invite people of all backgrounds and stuff like that. But they've had guys like Drake and 2 Chainz and J. Cole and Travis Scott, but they've also had guys like Jon Stewart and
it's like informal roundtable,
Seth Rogen and stuff. And they just sit around and drink wine and dark liquor for a couple hours, and they turn it into a 35-minute show, and it's really good. It's so good. They talk about all sorts of sensitive and deep elements of social constructs of America, and they talk a lot about race and racism and entrenched racism, and they talk about what it's like to be famous and powerful and black in America, but also just famous and powerful regardless of what race or background you come from. It's really good. But this last episode had Lonzo Ball on the show, and it was revealing in a lot of different ways, because LeBron James and Lonzo Ball talked a lot about this Magic Johnson saga, which I think we'll probably get into next hour when we're talking about the Lakers. They talked about the fact that neither one of them really knew about this, how like they found out about Magic Johnson getting fired from each other. Like they were like, bro, did you hear about Magic Johnson like texting each other? That's crazy in itself. But I thought that the other really revealing and poignant and powerful part of this was how on this specific episode you had Jamie Foxx in the studio and 2 Chainz, and Travis Scott, and LeBron James, Maverick Carter, all guys that came from disenfranchised backgrounds, very poor growing up, single-parent homes, and Don Cheadle was on there too. And I thought,
solid.
I thought
he's solid,
he's
man.
great.
He's great.
But LeBron James and Don Cheadle had this great exchange where they were talking to Lonzo Ball, and they said, just broadly tell us what you think of your dad, because LeVar Ball has garnered a ton of headlines and a ton of controversy, and he was the loudmouth that led the sports talk radio shows for more than a year,
over about 18 months,
and he's since kind of gone away. I think a part of that's probably because LeBron James and Maverick Carter probably told him, hey, we got this. But also Lonzo Ball is a father himself now. He just had a baby, and Lonzo Ball seems to have matured a little bit, and now he's he has a year in the league under his belt. But Lonzo Ball said, hey, it's all love, man. It's all love. I can't thank my dad enough. And I thought that Maverick Carter, LeBron James, and Don Cheadle all agreed, and they all said such a powerful thing. They said, man, that guy, he cares about you more than he ever could care about a son. He is the super dad of all time. And they all said, we don't even have dads. I'm so happy that you had a chance to have a father. And even if he is obnoxious, even if he is out there screaming and yelling, I always thought LeVar Ball is obnoxious.
Absolutely.
But he's also it's brilliant because he's deflecting the attention and the pressure from his son. And his son doesn't have to be under the spotlight. His son already is under a big enough spotlight. One of the number one recruits in the country, playing at UCLA, drafted number 2 by the Lakers. He can't shoot, whatever. But that was the secondary storyline to LeVar Ball's loud mouth. And that was the plan. And they all said, I would have loved to have somebody screaming from the mountaintop, advocating for me, supporting me. And Lonzo Ball said, yeah, man, like at the end of the day, I know my pops loves me. I know that he did everything for me. And I think that there's a lot of men out there, especially that come from disenfranchised backgrounds, African-American men, that would have died to have a great father. I know you yourself had a great father.
I had a great dad.
I had a great father. It makes such a huge impact in your life, and this is what we're talking about. You can be LeVar Ball, and that it's maybe not the healthiest thing in the world, but it is still important, and that is so much better than being the absentee parent.
I have 2 things that I want to reply, and it's a reply, not a retort. I talk to my wife all the time about my son, and we love our son. Sometimes I think we overlove our son, and it gets to the point where, throughout the night, it's just he'll run by and I'll be like, Dad, son, I love you. And he'll turn around and be like, Dad, I know, like, old man, you've said this like 100 times and it's only Monday and you're going to say it 500 times before it's Thursday. But you know what? My son will grow up as a man, never questioning that his father loved him, never questioning, did my dad say what he meant and meant what he say? Yeah, because I said it every day. And I said it enough times that you got sick of it, but you heard it and you listened to it. So you could never, ever waver in your knowledge of self and your father. Did I love you? Was I there? Did I support you? Because I am that dad. And that's not a braggadocious thing. That's a choice. And that's the choice that my dad made for me and my grandfather made for him. The second part of that, and I'm going to go look up this show that you're talking about.
To watch the show.
I've got to watch it now because like fathers in sports to me is such a big thing, and it's kind of oxymoronic on the eve of Mother's Day weekend.
Sure,
Sorry, moms out there.
Right. Shout out to the moms.
Oh, no doubt, because without moms there are no fathers. You know what I'm saying? Be a good father, man. Be a good dad. Be a good dad. Or better that, be a good father. Any man can be a daddy, but it takes a real man to be a father. Be a father, too. You know what I'm saying?
Amen. And I think it's great that you tell Quentin that you love him all the time.
All the time.
Because I think that there's so many men that grow up that know that they believe their fathers do love them, but they've never heard it, and so they don't know.
They don't know.
And that's passed on, too. I mean, the emotionally absent, that's one of the biggest flaws that happened in the 20th century. And I think we're changing that slowly in the 21st century is emotionally absent men. And I think that that's one way of expressing it. So never stop telling your kiddo you love them, because I know you do. Hour 1 of the books. Hour 2, we're talking NBA. We're talking strange sports phrases. And of course, we're probably going to talk a little bit more about the state of society.
Tucker Sargent.
Yes.
What do you think, Tommy? Should we let Tucker come on now, or should we go after the break?
Let's ask him. Tucker, do you want to talk now or do you want to wait?
I'm not waiting. I got groceries to buy.
Sarge.
All right, Sarge, what you got?
Well, first off, Regime, I got to say amen to you because my dad has told me he still tells me. He still kisses me on the friggin' face and,
Love it.
Every day. There's never been a question. However, not very supportive in sports because he really just doesn't get them. That's definitely my mom, who's the sports one. So you can get it from both sides. Parents fill different roles.
Absolutely.
My question was, first off, LeVar Ball is the man, and I hate everything he does, but I love what he went and did and just bucked the trend and told the corporations that, no, I've got other platforms, and he sold out, and he was able to build a brand just in a different way, not going up through Nike or Adidas or whomever it was, and I really just appreciate what he did there for his family and for his kids. I don't really like him or what he's doing, but I appreciate the methods, and I appreciate what he was doing for his family. But is Big Baller still a brand, or is that fizzled out already?
Well, they're going through it. That was the other thing that they talked about was how LeVar actually had a partner who Lonzo considered like his second father. His uncle is basically what he was branded as, even though there's no blood relation. And he was living in the house that they bought with the Big Baller brand money and with Lonzo's money. And all of a sudden, $3.5 million disappeared from Lonzo's checking account, and this dude had no explanation. And so they had basically a Ball family beef. And that was the other thing that they talked about. They said that was one of the things that LeVar has disappeared from the spotlight for, was to take care of this issue.
Situation.
Right. So it's interesting, but I agree with Tucker. I think that it's a brilliant tactic to deflect, but also to build something that bucks the trend, bucks the status quo.
Absolutely, man. I don't really I would never personally do that, but if he has a platform for it and you can do this and everyone else is telling you got to go this way, no, you got to sign with this, you got to, sign the studio. Unless you're LeBron James, how much money are you really making off those shoes? I mean, there's so many guys with shoe deals, but they're just endorsement deals. They're not truly where you're the one profiting from it. And this one is no, man, we even though they're a $400 shoe, people are going to buy a $400 shoe. They're going to give you the money. Go ahead and take it if that's what you're going after. And he went after it, and I think that, good on him. Good on him. People were saying he's selling out his kids. It's his kids are all about it. I think it's a guy that truly did love his kid or does love his kids, and that's just the way they wanted to do it. I got no problems with it.
Keep it close to the vest. And what I like in that deal, too, is the music industry. The artist does 92% of the work, but only sees 7.5% of the profit.
Right.
So it's one of those things, is there such thing as the starving artist? Heck yeah, unless you've sold, quadrillion, you've gone double platinum.
Sure, and you're seeing those barriers broken down too. I mean, look what Spotify's done to open up doors for all these guys all over the place. And I think, there hasn't been truly that thing yet for sports marketing, I guess you'd call it, but this is one, chink in the armor of the corporate shield that's been guarding and building it up for the fat cats that are making the money off the guys doing the work. People get so upset with how much sports players make, but I think it's so much more ridiculous to think what a CEO makes of a company when they've got the sports person is actually the one creating the interest. If he wasn't there, this economic driver wouldn't exist. You need the athletes or the person doing it. Same with music. If the artist isn't there, you don't have all these other avenues. So why are those other avenues the ones profiteering the most?
Exactly.
I think, people say it's ridiculous how much money people make. Sure, that, it could be spread out more, but it's more ridiculous to me that it's someone that's making a lot of the money isn't even partaking in the creation of what is being consumed.
Tucker, you're already warmed up. You're already ready for next week. We'll get back to it. Two Till Nuanez. We got to get out. 102.9 ESPN Radio. Other side, NBA, and more on this exact topic. Love you too, Tuck.
Love you too, man.
8 Till Nuanez here. Can't tell you how many times we've heard the face for radio joke since we came on SWX television, but it's been a fun endeavor so far.
And now our esteemed producer Tommy is pushing the envelope even further. We got our own YouTube channel.
That's right. If you want to watch us every day from your computer, your tablet, your cell phone, you can check out Two Till Nuanez on YouTube.
Two Till Nuanez live every weekday from 4 to 6 in the afternoons on 102.9 ESPN Radio for Missoula, SWX Montana statewide, and now around the planet Earth on YouTube. Hey folks, the best season of the year is upon us. That's right, it's tax return season, and there's one place to have the most fun and make that refund check stretch further than anywhere else, Selway Armory. Selway Armory has the largest selection of firearms, ammo, and accessories of anywhere around, and they have the expertise to go with it. It's not everywhere that you can shop local and save money, but Selway Armory will meet or beat any box store price, and your money stays in Montana. It's tax return time, so get more bang for your buck at Selway Armory. Visit online at selwayarmory.com. Canyon River Golf Club is a must for any golfer in western Montana. Tucked away in a spectacular setting along the Clark Fork River in East Missoula, Canyon River offers one of Montana's best championship golf experiences. And Canyon River is happy to announce their new fleet of golf carts, which include the Shark Experience, an interactive GPS giving dynamic distances and touchscreen interaction to help you play your best. Plus, with Bluetooth, radio, and surround sound, you can enjoy yourself between holes too. Book online at CanyonRiverGolfClub.com. Missoula's best golf, Canyon River.
It's May, and here in Montana, there is plenty to celebrate. Graduations, Mother's Day, Memorial Day, sunshine, and a full summer ahead. For last-minute gifts or just a good stop on a road trip from here to there, be sure to include Florence Coffee Company. We have reloadable gift cards, good travel mugs, and a full menu of delicious drinks. Celebrate May by stopping at any Florence Coffee Company's 19 locations in western Montana or go to florencecoffeeco.com.
Hey folks, Ryan Tutel here, and I'm with Josh from the Advocates Injury Attorneys. Josh, if our listeners have been injured in an accident, how can you help?
We're here to help you after a car accident by negotiating with insurance companies, recovering lost wages if you have any, and even getting you into a rental car if you need one. Call us today for a free consultation, and we'll get started helping you right away.
If you need help, get a hold of the Advocates. Call Josh at 640-4444 or online at montanaadvocates.com. You deserve an advocate.
Some so-called sports bars, you spend so much time fighting to see the TV, you're better off just staying home. Others show the game, but a basket of stale rye chips is not exactly your idea of a good game grub. At the Desperado, you get front row seats to every single spring baseball and NASCAR event, plus all the spring NBA and NHL postseason action. And with juicy burgers, ice-cold brews, and the best wings in town, you'll leave the Desperado satisfied whether your team won or lost. The Desperado Sports Tavern, where the emphasis is sports, food, and good times on South Russell, across from the Y.
ESPN Radio for Western Montana, KKVU HD3 Stevensville, and 102.9 FM on K275BS Missoula. ESPN Missoula Sports Center.
Good afternoon. Erica McLeod, a champion once again. This is Colton Nuanez. McLeod, Montana's peerless senior from Butte, posted dominant marks in both the high jump and the long jump the first 2 days of the women's heptathlon to extend her gap on the way to scoring 5,425 points, enough to win her 5th overall multi-events Big Sky Conference title. McLeod set the Big Sky indoor record in the pentathlon earlier this spring, her 3rd indoor championship in the multis, but was a late scratch at nationals because of an injured calf. After missing 6 weeks, she bounced back from the injury to win the heptathlon for the 2nd time. Jansen Ziola and Jari Main finished 6th and 7th respectively for the Lady Grizz, giving the Montana women 15 points entering the first full day of the meet. That began today. In the men's decathlon, Montana sophomore Brendan Thurber Blazer capitalized on a no-height from reigning champion Portland State senior Dante Robinson in the pole vault to claim his first Big Sky championship. Thurber Blazer had the top marks in the discus and the javelin on the way to 7,154 points, just 22 more than Montana State junior Wyatt Thompson-Support, who finished as the runner-up. Aiden Diggs and Josh Rowley of Montana finished 3rd and 4th respectively to give the Grizz 21 points in the team event. And finally, the Sentinel boys and the Hellgate girls. They are the city champions of Missoula Track and Field after posting team wins at the Greg Rice meet on Thursday at Missoula County Public Stadium. Nuanez getting funky with Nuanez and Seabrook, Regime Seabrook in studio with me, Colter Nuanez. Ryan Tutel, other side of the globe, Philippines, for this show and the next 5 after it. Then he'll be back mid-May. I know you're missing him, but probably not that much because we got all sorts of good guys lined up for everybody, including my main guy, Mr. Pink. Regime Seabrook sitting on the other side of the studio. Welcome in, everybody up there. SWX Montana, the YouTube channel. Go up and hit up YouTube, Tutel Nuanez. We need some subscribers. We need you to watch that thing. Tommy Evans doing a great job with the graphics, the ticker, everything. The YouTube channel. We're worldwide, and we're also statewide. SWX Montana, appreciate those guys for being with us as well. Missed anything in the first hour of the show, you can hit it up on the podcast. Podcast available to you on the TuneIn radio app or on iTunes or on Spotify, or you can find it at the station website, 1029ESPN.com. Podcast available thanks to the Wingate by Wyndham. On that website, you can also find the stream, which is presented by Opportunity Bank, your local bank, your opportunity. If you want to give us a call, we're about to talk some NBA. I know that's polarizing all the time, so you can hit us up, 329-1899. All guests join us via the Regich Brothers RV phone line. Before we talk NBA playoffs, you were just saying you got to get out of here after this and go praise some comics.
Yeah.
So you're a comic book guy.
Yeah, man. My good friend Rami Haddad and his brother and mother and father own the Book Exchange. And make a little extra cheddar. I go over there and I take care of his comics for him, and in the process, he takes care of me, and it's a beautiful thing. But yeah, big time comic book collector.
What's the crown jewel comic that you have?
That's a tough one because the comic market's always in flux, just like stocks and bonds. So like,
for sure,
it's actually, my most recent crown jewel was getting the first appearance of Luke Cage, aka Power Man, back. I got it graded, and it came back at a 9.0, and that's a great book to have in that condition, considering how old it is. But my favorite by far are probably the first 100 issues of the X-Men in like perfect condition.
We've been talking a lot about collecting on the show lately. Got a new segment going once a month. It's called the RIP Session, sponsored by Zootown Sports Cards. Shout out to Jason and the folks down there. They have a great memorabilia shop, all sorts of sports cards and jerseys and the like. It's a great thing. If you get a chance, go check it out. It's right across from Dornblazer Field, right there on the corner of Higgins and South. But I'm a huge card collector, both comic book related, like X-Men cards, but also football, basketball, and baseball cards. But people wonder, why is this stuff worth money? Well, it's worth money because of the nostalgia of it all, because of the just coveted nature of some of the characters, whether they're real-life athletes or fictional characters. But more than anything, it's because of the objective rarity. And the objective rarity comes from some of the stuff is just low issue, low printed.
Low print runs.
But also the quality. Like when you say you get something graded, when you get a 9, that means it's in almost a gem mint condition. So that means that not only is it in almost perfect condition, it also means that it was printed perfectly. The gloss is perfect. It's untainted, which then makes it even more rare because it means it's among the most pristine of that already prestigious comic or card in the world, right?
Right. And then, once you get it in the comic world, we call it you get in your book slabbed, and because it's literally slabbed in like a hard plastic resin, and then it's locked in for life, not only at that grade, but just it's not going to deteriorate in that, and now that it's been preserved, so to say. It's my hobby, man. I love it, and we might have to do some wheeling and dealing now that I know you might have some books, and I definitely have cards. So
it's funny because I've done a ton of wheeling and dealing in my life with my sports cards, and value is very non-important to me in terms of like the attachment I have to them. Like I have a unbelievable collection of Alex Rodriguez cards. I don't like Alex Rodriguez. Alex Rodriguez has collector value still, despite his polarized personality
and career.
Well, I'm about to take those down to the boys down there and trade them in because I don't care. But I do have nostalgic and emotional attachment to like my Cal Ripken cards. Or my, like
one of the greats.
My Karl Malone cards, even though Karl Malone's not necessarily that big of a collector's draw. So it's what you like. Interesting. It's interesting. It's definitely interesting. But I think people think it's silly that these things have value, but it's just anything has value for two reasons. One, what people will pay for it.
Bingo.
And two, how rare is it?
Bingo.
Why is gold worth money? Because gold's a rare mineral. Why is diamonds worth money? Because they're hard to mine and they're unbreakable and they're rare.
They only exist in X amount of places on the planet.
That's right.
Gotta love it.
Tutel Nuanez, 129 ESPN Missoula. Regime Seabrook in studio with me, Colter Nuanez. NBA playoffs? Are you into the NBA playoffs? You digging on the NBA playoffs?
I'm digging them because they're this round in particular. I love the fact that these games are getting pushed and guys are balling. They're actually balling, and I love it.
So before we get to the actual specific series, because right now we're in the final 8, this is the best time for me because you get back-to-back games every night. And but Sean Rainey and I were talking about this earlier this week. The ratings are down in the NBA playoffs, and the pundits say that's because LeBron James is at home and because you talk about the big market teams, the Lakers, the Bulls, the Knicks didn't make the playoffs. Mm-hmm. The Nets were out in 5 games. The Clippers actually gave a surprisingly good run to
that was a good series.
The Warriors, but regardless, you got the 3 biggest TV markets in the country out. And all that is irrelevant. I want to ask you first and foremost, I find it refreshing. I'm a huge LeBron James fan. Love LeBron James. Want LeBron James to win and win and win and win so that he is remembered as in the air that he deserves, I believe. I believe he is one of the 3 best players of all time. I think that if he wins 1 or 2 more championships, it's indisputable, and I want him to reach that level because I just think that he was the prodigy, the chosen one, and he has affirmed that unwaveringly. But I also find it refreshing that LeBron's not in the playoffs because it's not this LeBron and every other storyline. It's not this. Sometimes the LeBron march in the last 10 years to the finals has been spectacular. Other times it's been plodding and tedious, but he's gotten there every time. The fact that he's not there and the East is wide open, you have this up-and-coming, super interesting team in the Bucks. You have this incredibly dysfunctional but incredibly high-ceiling, low-floor team in the Sixers. You got this team that no one wants to give any credit to, but all of a sudden Kawhi Leonard has proven that he's one of the best players in the league in Toronto. And then on the other side, you got the 2 most fun teams in the whole playoffs, in my opinion, in the Blazers and the Nuggets going against each other. And then you got the Titans battling with the Rockets and the Warriors. So first and foremost, what do you think of just this non-LeBron playoffs?
It's first of all, like you said, it's been a decade, or is it 8 or 9 years?
I mean, LeBron's been to 8 straight finals, but he's been to the playoffs, I think, 12 straight years.
So it's weird to not have a conversation about the NBA playoffs and not mention LeBron doing something spectacular, and then sometimes LeBron just being LeBron. So from that perspective in and of itself, there's an absence, kind of like going back to the first segment. The Legion of Boom, it's just gone. You know what I mean? Like LeBron in that light now is just gone. The problem and what I feel that the ratings are down, there's no polarizing person in the East. There's just no one there that carries.
Because the Celtics are out now. Kyrie Irving was that guy, right?
To a point. I mean,
I guess he was a figure on a polarizing team.
I would say that more than being a polarizing figure. There's nothing compelling out of the East right now that's making people kind of turn their heads outside of what Kawhi Leonard has done in the last 8 to 10 days. It's also from the West, it's kind of predictable. It's like, the same X amount of teams are going to get in. Golden State's going to be there at the end, and it makes basketball somewhat boring. So, like, the ratings are down because it's reflective of who's in and who is not in. But more so, there's just a predictability nature of, is it going to be one of 4 teams that will make it in the Western Conference Finals, and it's some of the same teams that are still playing.
What do you think of the emergence of Nikola Jokic?
Dude, what's up?
How fun is he?
He's fun.
How about last night when
making noise?
How about last night when he did the 2 hands on the ball spinning elbow and just said Zach Collins to Pluto and back? And then there's a fight that breaks out and it's like, bro, get out the way. This guy weighs 300 pounds. What do you think was going to happen?
That's like sitting there trying to, go one-on-one with Shaq with his back to you. Good luck. You're an idiot.
I think Jokic is a complete revelation because I think people look at him and they think, oh, this guy's kind of pudgy. He's kind of ugly. He's got big feet. He's got a 1-inch vertical. He's slow. He never sprints anywhere. Yet he just
kills you.
Just kills you because his pace is peerless. It doesn't matter that he's not fast. Mm. He's still going by you. Mm. And if he's not going by you, he's going through
you.
And the fact that he can't jump, it doesn't matter. The way he sees the angles, the way he boxes guys out, the way he gets the ball, his skill.
Who does he remind you of? It's hold on. I'm going to write this down. It's on television. And I love your brain, and you know that.
Man.
And if it's the same player, then we need to hang out more. Who?
I don't know, man. I don't know if he reminds me of anybody. He's like an evolutionary no one. Because he's so skilled.
You know who he reminds me of? Especially in his skill, like his last 8 years in the league, Hakeem Olajuwon.
Yeah.
Like just that awareness.
The awareness, the vision.
The vision, the body placement.
Yeah.
Again, not the fastest, not the strong.
But Olajuwon's so flossy. And like Olajuwon's soccer background, his footwork, like the dream shake.
Right.
The touch.
It's the same mentality of playing around the basket, of knowing how and where to be and not wasting body time, not wasting what little speed he does have to nullify himself. And that same patience, that same ability to see it before it's happening. Last time I saw that type of ability was Olajuwon.
Yeah, it's a decent comparison for sure.
Thank you, sir.
In the basketball IQ, for sure.
Yep.
The spacing part of it,
Mm-hmm.
and the way you can run through him out of the high post and stuff like that. Yeah, it's definitely interesting. Let's just bang out through these series.
Okay.
The Bucks taking down the Celtics. After Game 1, the way that the Celtics isolated Kyrie Irving, the way that they took out Giannis Antetokounmpo. I thought Brad Stevens had the absolute upper hand against Mike Budenholzer. I thought Kyrie Irving had the absolute upper hand in the mismatches. And I thought the fact that the Celtics could throw Al Horford, Gordon Hayward, Jaylen Brown, Jason Tatum all at Giannis, that I thought the Celtics were going to cruise. I said that on this show. And I'm here to ask for forgiveness because I was completely and utterly incorrect. The Bucks dominated the series after that. And now when I think about it, I think the Bucks have the best chance against the Warriors besides the series the Warriors are playing right now.
Oh, absolutely.
Because the Bucks can shoot the three, but they're not dependent on a singular three-point shooter. All their guys are spot-up shooters, and they have this alien from Saturn who we've never seen before. This guy is just he's unbelievable. Giannis is unbelievable.
The Greek Freak is like a moniker that needs to be redone because it's underselling this young man. His abilities are just. I like the word you use, alien. Like, it's just, how does a dude that size move like that? Like, it doesn't, the physics of it, don't, sort of like Zion. How are you that big and you move like that?
Right.
The physics belie logic.
I gotta give you this theory because you'll appreciate this. The NBA is the league that has the most superstars of any pro sports league right now, no doubt. It has the most recognizable guys, the most marketable guys. Tucker Sargent was talking about shoe deals. I agree with what he's saying. Like there's probably I'd say 100 of the 350 guys in the league have quote unquote shoe deals, but 85 of those guys are just getting shoes and gear, and they're getting some bucks, but they're not getting multi-million-dollar shoe deals. But there is 15 guys in the league that have legitimate endorsement deals. You know, their team Adidas, their team Jordan, their team Nike, whatever it might be. And I think that you could probably say that there's, I'd say that as far as guys that are bona fide, quote unquote superstars, I'd say there's probably 15 guys in the league that are, they're recognizable. They got commercials.
Oh, easily.
And of those guys, almost every one of them is polarizing. LeBron James, because he's been so famous for so long, people have just found ways to hate him, even though he's not that hateable.
Steph Curry.
Kevin Durant is hateable because he's so demonstrative. He's so whiny. Steph Curry, for whatever reason, despite his sort of squeaky clean personality, he chews on his mouthpiece. He whines at the refs. People don't like it. James Harden, as polarizing of a player in the league because of his style. Joel Embiid never stops talking.
Never stops.
Anthony Davis was the kind of the beacon of hope who no one hated, and then he just pulls a crybaby and sits out and demands a trade, and on down the line. Paul George, people don't know what to think of him.
Russ,
Kyrie Irving, he's talking about crazy stuff and
an enigma unto himself.
Exactly. Russell Westbrook,
too angry,
so demonstrative. Chris Paul, whiny. Klay Thompson, because he's on the Warriors, even though he's done nothing wrong. People don't like him. Draymond Green flopping all over the place. Ben Simmons can't shoot. D'Angelo Russell traded out of L.A. Karl Anthony Towns, why aren't you better? DeMar DeRozan, why aren't you better? On down the line. Jimmy Butler, a cancer maybe. All these guys that are quote unquote star players. This is a list Sean Rainey and I did earlier this week. My top 25 players in the league. The only guys I didn't read off of this list to you were Giannis Antetokounmpo. Kawhi Leonard, Nikolai Jokic, and Damian Lillard.
Stand-up dudes.
Kawhi Leonard and Damian Lillard were not, quote-unquote, child stars. They were not the 5-star recruits. They were not
weren't.
the guys that were playing the McDonald's All-American
Nope.
game. They were not the dudes getting brokered by the shoe companies before
No.
they were even in college. They were not the dudes going to Duke, North Carolina, Indiana, Arizona. Kawhi Leonard's at Fresno State. Kawhi Leonard, everybody wonders why Kawhi Leonard. I mean, Kawhi Leonard has one of the most undertold stories of anybody in the league. Kawhi Leonard's father was murdered at a car wash. He was just working at a car wash, trying to feed his family, murdered. Kawhi Leonard, according to the people that know him best, said he did not speak for 2 years after that. He just went to work on his game. Well, it seemed to have worked out pretty well. But he's not a polarizing figure because of his lack of personality. And I think that goes into what he comes from.
Right.
Damian Lillard is a 1-star recruit out of Oakland, California. He plays in the Big Sky Conference. He goes to Weber State. He's hurt most of his college career. He finally blows up, and now he's one of the 10 best players in the league. But he doesn't have that entitlement that came from being a quote-unquote child star. Nikola Jokic, he's from the Eastern Bloc. He's from Serbia. He's from somewhere where the look at me attitude is not even a possibility.
No.
And Giannis Antetokounmpo was at one point in his life homeless and stealing bread to feed himself. I just think it's fascinating that the least demonstrative, most appealing guys in the league are the ones that weren't anointed and coddled from a young age.
Brother, you were solid. God, the fountain of brain cells just emanates forth continuously. Oh my God!
But back to this,
I love that. That is brilliant.
Back to the Bucks and the Celtics, though. I think that Giannis Antetokounmpo has one of the great bodies we've seen in the league.
Ridiculous.
A 7-foot guy that has put in the work to get himself up to 250 pounds, yet still is agile, smooth. He glides. He's got long arms, ridiculously big hands, all of that. And I think those are all a huge part of why he is likely going to be the MVP of the NBA this year.
As he should.
But to me, the fact that even Jokic complains from time to time. Lillard has reached the borderline superstar status where he's trying to now cultivate with the officials, getting some calls. Even though he's not a whiner, he's trying to get that James Harden call. He's trying to get that pump fake. You know what I'm doing. Remember my game.
Right.
Look at me. Kawhi Leonard, he's kind of one in his own. Giannis never talks to anybody. All he does is dunks on you and stares you down. And I think that is the number one thing that sets him apart. He is a straight killer. In the 2 games ago against the Celtics, when the Celtics were up by 10 and then Giannis just completely took over the fourth quarter, take no prisoners, bro. It was crazy watching him.
It's that the bread has been replaced by the ball, brother. And that's as soon as you told that story of the bread, that's where I went in my head. The ball and the bread have switched places.
Unbelievable.
And that's why that boy is playing possessed basketball.
Unbelievable. So we touched on that series. We touched on the Blazers-Nuggets series. The Warriors-Rockets, the last game, the Warriors were able to hang on somehow, some way, despite the Kevin Durant injury. 2-part question. First of all, where are you at with KD? Because I think it's so unfortunate the way that he has branded himself, because I think just pure basketball-wise, he's the number one player in the world. And he should be more he should be more beloved than he is because of his own attitude. But and then secondly, are the with KD likely out for the next game and probably out for the rest of the series? Where are you at with this series?
Steph Curry's going to find his groove again and do Steph Curry things. That's just my feeling. These guys have played so hard for so long that they're not going to let the absence of Kevin Durant derail them from repeating. The thing about Kevin Durant and his likability or his lack of affability is a direct result of him being reflexive and reactive to the world, which shows immaturity. It also shows where we are with the world, that everyone that has a phone, and that's everyone on the planet, now thinks they have a pulpit and a microphone and the ability to say what they want to say. At the end of the day, I don't care what people think about Kevin Durant, but Kevin Durant does think about what people say about him. And that's sometimes that's a hard pill to swallow, whether it's the truth or not. And I think that the combination of him and society is why we have Kevin Durant the way we have him. Because 3 years prior to that, this country loved Kevin Durant.
No doubt.
They loved him. now they loathe him. And part of that is, again, his immaturity, but then our society's ability to just think that everyone's got a PhD or an MD behind their name.
Where are you at with that series?
I'm saddened by the fact that Kevin Durant actually is hurt. He was playing amazing basketball, like just amazing. But I at this point, without
Turnabout fair play, though, because the Rockets might have won that series if Chris Paul didn't get hurt last year.
That is also true. So it's, here we are a year later, right? I would like to see the Rockets wrap it up, man. I would love to see the Rockets advance and see someone else beside Golden State always be there. I would love to see Rockets Nuggets Western Conference Finals. That'd be fun.
Or Rockets Blazers would be fun too.
Either which way. But yeah, I'm wanting the Rockets to pull it off.
Last question for actually.
Just go, buddy. Just go.
We're gonna take a break because I want to ask you, because I actually want to extrapolate on this a little bit. I want you to think about this.
Go for it.
The Philadelphia 76ers have as many assets as anybody in the league.
Correct.
But I think they're in a crossroads right now. I think that they have to make a decision, because I think that where they're at right now, I don't know if they can get to truly where they want to be, but I do think with the guys they have in place, they can make some trades or move some pieces to get where they want to be. So I want to get your thoughts on the Sixers and on that series. Tutel Nuanez, actually Nuanez and Seabrook, 129 ESPN Missoula.
Everybody knows that high school sports generate suspense, excitement, and drama.
They also generate higher grade point averages, stronger work habits, and greater self-esteem.
Everybody knows that high school sports give us more value for our entertainment dollar.
They also give us leaders committed to strengthening communities right here in Montana. The true value of playing sports in school can't be measured in wins and losses or dollars and cents. Studies show that participation in sports, along with other extracurricular activities, is one of the best ways to teach leadership, cooperation, accountability, and other invaluable life skills. Don't just stand on the sidelines. Encourage the young people you know to get in the game. When you do, you'll be helping them get ahead in life. High school sports, a winning part of a complete education. This message presented by the Montana High School Association and the Montana Interscholastic Athletic Administrators Association.
Good news. Missoulians can finally move into what we love best, being outside. Garden City Paint and Glass can help you get a head start on all those outside home improvement projects. Now is also a great time to start getting a jump on cracked windows and broken screens. Enjoy up to 25% off select products. And be sure to watch for PPG rebates to help the job along. Look good, stay comfortable, and keep energy costs down at Garden City Paint and Glass. 3217 Brooks or 549-0608.
Canyon River Golf Club is a must for any golfer in western Montana. Tucked away in a spectacular setting along the Clark Fork River in East Missoula, Canyon River offers one of Montana's best championship golf experiences. And Canyon River is happy to announce their new fleet of golf carts, which include the Shark Experience, an interactive GPS giving dynamic distances and touchscreen interaction to help you play your best. Plus, with Bluetooth, radio, and surround sound, you can enjoy yourself between holes too. Book online at CanyonRiverGolfClub.com. Missoula's best golf, Canyon River.
This Mother's Day, treat the Montana mom in your life to the Montana Club's famous Mother's Day buffet. She'll be dazzled as she savors everything from slow-roasted prime rib and glazed ham to fresh berry crepes and lemon bars. If mom wants to sleep in, bring her in later for our artfully crafted Mother's Day dinner specials like brandy peppercorn filet and steak and Maine lobster tail. Mother's Day buffet 8 to 2, followed by Mother's Day dinner specials 3 to close. The Montana Club on Brooks and North Reserve, Missoula.
Hey there, Colter Nuanez from Tutel Nuanez 1029 ESPN Missoula, here with Tom from Aspen Sound. Tom got me a great deal on an automatic car starter this winter. Now it's summer. What sort of stuff you guys got going on down there, Tom?
Well, Colter, coming into the summertime, we're picking up on the window tinting front. So if you need your windows tinted, give us a call. We'll get you scheduled up. Boats and ATVs are starting to come in full swing, and we're also starting to see the hot rods come out to play. Anything audio related, let us know. We'll get you taken care of.
Feel the music at Aspen Sound.
ESPN Missoula Sports Center.
Good afternoon. Colter Nuanez 1029 ESPN Missoula. Erica McLeod, a champion once again. McLeod, Montana's peerless senior from Butte, posted dominant marks in the high jump on day one and the long jump on day two to extend the gap on the way to scoring 5,425 points in the women's heptathlon, enough to earn her 5th overall multi-events Big Sky Conference championship. McLeod set the Big Sky indoor record in the pentathlon earlier this spring, her third individual indoor championship, and was a late scratch at nationals because of an injured calf. She missed 6 weeks leading up to the outdoor championships, but bounced back in a big way from the injury to win the heptathlon for the second time in her illustrious career. Jansen Ziola and Jari Main finished 6th and 7th, respectively, for the Grizz, giving the Montana women 15 points entering the first full day of the meet, which began today. In the men's decathlon, Montana sophomore Brendan Thurber Blazer capitalized on a no height from defending decathlon champion Portland State senior Dante Robinson in the pole vault to claim his first Big Sky championship. Thurber Blazer had the top marks in the discus and the javelin on the way to 7,154 points, just 22 more than Montana State junior Wyatt Thompson-Saporin. Aiden Diggs and Josh Riley of Montana finished 3rd and 4th to give the Grizz 21 points entering today. And finally, the Sentinel boys and the Hellgate girls claimed the Missoula City Track Championships with wins at the Greg Rice City Meet yesterday at Missoula County Public Stadium.
She's a very kinky girl, the kind you don't take home to mother. She will never let your spirits down once you get her off the street. Oh, girl.
Tutel Nuanez, 1029 ESPN Missoula, broadcasting to you live, Kurtz Polaris Studios. Kurtz Polaris, located at 2904 West Broadway in Missoula and Highway 83 in Sealy. You can also find them at kurtzpolaris.com. If you want to find us online, 1029ESPN.com. You can also hit us up on Facebook.com/ESPN Missoula. You can also find full coverage of the Big Sky Conference Outdoor Track and Field Championships, including a great profile by my man Andrew Houghton. He's working for us at SkylineSportsMT.com. He wrote a sweet profile about Sterling Renault and Alex Mustard, a pair of Missoula native sprinters who are competing for the University of Montana and will compete on their home track in their hometown for the last time at the Big Sky Conference Outdoor Track and Field Championships. Go check that out. Both those guys have come a long way since their days at Big Sky and Sentinel, and a phenomenally done, well-written story by Andrew Houghton, SkylineSportsMT.com.
I love that Renault family, man. Paul used to work for my organization.
Yep.
Great guy.
Two-time Olympian.
Yeah, dude, actually beat Carl Lewis in prelims and has photo evidence to prove it.
Bro, is there any, okay.
I'm just throwing that out there.
We got to have a little bit of a rant. It's so interesting the way sports evolve. College football, college men's basketball, as well as the NFL and the NBA are certainly the biggest sports in America. No
Absolutely.
doubt. And they have such a huge draw. And because of that, they've pulled so many great athletes that might have participated in other sports back in the day. I often think, if this was 1955, Khalil Mack would be the heavyweight champion of the world. He would not be a defensive end in the NFL because the heavyweight champion of the world had way more prestige in 1955 than it does now. But being a defensive end, all-pro defensive end, defensive MVP for the Chicago Bears, now a lot more prestige. I think that's one of the main reasons why boxing, especially American boxing, is taking a hit because a lot of guys gravitate towards football. But track and field now, Usain Bolt, no doubt one of the great and most transcendent, memorable, epic athletes that the world has ever known. But the American group of sprinters from the last 10 to 15 years, Maurice Green, Tyson Gay, Justin Gatlin, these guys, people that are track and field fans know these guys, but these guys are not household names like Antonio Brown and DeAndre Hopkins and some of these NFL receivers. And I just wonder how many guys, like Tyreek Hill, despite all the controversies he's gone through now, what if he would have just run track his whole life? The point of the story is it's easy to forget the magnitude of track stars before this cultural explosion happened with how popular the NFL and the NBA have become. What I think a lot of people don't realize is before 1980, NBA games were never shown live anywhere. They were tape delayed. The NBA Finals was not shown live in its totality until 1984. Magic Johnson, Larry Bird, Michael Jordan, they're the ones that brought this into the epicenter. And in the late 80s, early 90s, that's when the NBA burst onto the scene. The NFL, a little bit more early, but Joe Namath predicting the Super Bowl, beating the Indianapolis Colts, that was 50 years ago on the dot. So this is still the second half of the last century. And in the meantime, track and field at one moment was king. In 1984, when the Olympics were in America.
Yep.
And Carl Lewis. Carl Lewis was a bigger star than almost anybody in the NBA. Carl Lewis was a bigger star than almost anybody in the NFL.
So was Jackie Joyner Kersey.
Jackie Joyner Kersey, Florence
and
Griffin.
FloJo.
Yeah, right. And
absolutely.
No doubt. And I guess the point of that rant would be is you might think I sound foolish by saying this, but I don't know if there's any greater bragging right you can have than saying I beat Carl Lewis in a race.
Buddy, that's amazing.
We were talking about Ashley McElmurray earlier. She might go from the long jump to the 100 meters, and it's amazing. It's great. Phenomenal.
No, man. Paul,
so impressive.
Paul, ask him.
Carl Lewis, straight up, won Olympics, broke 4 world records in 2 hours. Doesn't get enough credit.
But got beat by Sterling's dad in prelims.
and Paul Renault beats him in prelims. What a story. But Andrew Houghton's story on SkylineSportsMT.com, it takes a very unique angle because there's been great track athletes that have come out of Montana, a ton of them.
A ton of them.
But it's been so long since Montana has produced elite sprinters that have then run sprints in Montana for one of the 2 college programs. And Paul Renault deserves so much credit.
He's the coach.
Alex Mustard and Sterling Renault are elite sprinters in this conference. They will both likely earn all-conference honors. Alex Mustard in the 200, Sterling Renault in the 400, and they will be in the mix for a podium for both the 4x100 and the 4x400 relay. And Paul Renault deserves a ton of credit for that, and those 2 young men deserve a ton of credit for their development as well.
Hey, man, if you have an athlete and Paul Renault, he does some training. He trains a lot of kids around this town, and he's a great mentor and a great man. Get your kids signed up with this guy, man. He will improve your. I sent some kids from Loyola over to him. This kid, and I'm going to respect his privacy, wound up becoming an all-state linebacker lineman, and he wasn't the same athlete he was before that he met Paul that he was after, and the proof's in the pudding, man. Shameless plugs for Paul.
Hey. And shameless plugs for SkylineSportsMT.com. Let's go. The Philadelphia 76ers.
What? Let's talk about them. Can't get out of their own way.
They've been at the forefront of the NBA conversation for so long because of the process, the tanking, the multiple number 1 picks. Then all of a sudden they have these assets. Then all of a sudden they're trying to break through. And then all of a sudden they're the scariest team in the league like they were last year when they were on a 20-game winning streak entering the playoffs. They have all these shooters around Simmons, and Embiid is the beast in the middle. And then they go and they trade in those shooters for a couple All-Stars, and Jimmy Butler and Tobias Harris. But like I always say on this show, all that glitters is not gold. More good players is not necessarily better in the NBA. You got to have roles. You got to have defined hierarchy. And they're not better than they were a year ago. In fact, they might fall short of where they advanced to a year ago. It's going to come down to Game 7 in Toronto. But I just want to know your opinion. We had this debate earlier in this week on this show, and Ryan and Tutel and I have had this debate as well. I think that you have to start with choosing between Ben Simmons and Joel Embiid.
Absolutely. I had this conversation with one of my brothers about a week or so ago, and he goes, man, what is up with Philly? I said, Philly reminds me of the mid-'90s Dallas Mavericks.
Michael Finley.
No. Or a little earlier than that.
Steve Nash.
Earlier than that, when they had Mashburn, Jason Kidd.
Yep.
And Jimmy Jackson.
Jimmy Jackson, yep.
Right? You had a guard, you had a forward, and you had your slasher. You had your in-between guy. Got all the talent, great nucleus. But regardless of all the talent, they couldn't put it together at the end of the day. Just couldn't put it together. And that's where this Philadelphia 76ers team is. They've got these 2 good players. They've got these 2 great slices of bread, but there's no peanut butter and jelly in the middle. There's nothing to bind that together, which is why they are where they are. They have no identity.
And the thing that's crazy is they do still have enough talent. If they win Game 7 in Toronto somehow, they're going to be in the Eastern Conference Finals.
Right. But the identity isn't there. Like last year's team, like the swagger it had, the edge it had. Like
how much more confident Ben Simmons was specifically with last year's team, right?
Oh, dude, he's shaking in his boots. That boy looks scared of his own shadow.
Because he knows everybody now. They game plan to him.
Bingo.
The difference is everybody has game plan for Ben Simmons for 3 years to make him shoot. But when you're Ben Simmons and you can just beat people off the dribble and you can kick it to J.J. Redick or Ilyasova or Marco Bellinelli, now your completely inability to shoot is negated because you can kick it to a 3-point shooter. But now, who's he kick it to? He kicks it to Jimmy Butler, who goes into ISO mode. He kicks it to Tobias Harris, who goes into ISO mode. Dumps it down to Embiid, and then he just stands there. Because Embiid's just going to go to work. So who do you pick though, Simmons or Embiid? If you're,
I pick Embiid. That's a no-brainer. You pick Embiid,
right? But I think it is sort of a no-brainer. But if Ben Simmons ever does figure it out, learns how to shoot, or if Ben Simmons just gets surrounded by the right roster, I mean, he's the evolutionary Magic Johnson.
There's some slight truth to that for me. My bigger thing is right now where they are in their respective careers with their respective talents and what they're displaying night in and night out. It's easier to build a nucleus around Embiid than it is around Fitzsimmons. Or Ben Simmons, sorry.
I agree. Embiid's injury history is concerning, I think.
No question. My thing is he just staying on his feet within the games that he's actually healthy to play.
100%. But this is the argument I always contradict, or that I always counter with when we're talking about when people say, well, Embiid might only play 5 more years. Well, I think if you just straight up invest 100% in Joel Embiid and you surround him with a team that complements him, 5 years is enough. You can win a championship or 2. And the Philadelphia 76ers have not won a championship since Moses Malone and Julius Erving were playing.
Since 76.
Yeah, right. So you're talking about, and I think if you were to trade Embiid, which I think it's impossible. There's no way you could trade one of the 5 best assets in the league. But say you were to go with Simmons.
They are if Gettleman's their guy. Sorry, my bad.
Oh, he's still salty about the Giants.
Forever.
If you were to go with Simmons, though, I don't know. I think the window to win a championship is much broader, 10 years. But I don't think that it's much. I don't think it's as fast of a track.
It's not, and unfortunately, with the way sports are in America, that then works against Simmons. Like, as a GM, as a president, is a city willing to wait?
What if they kept them both? Can they coexist? Because they coexisted better before they added Jimmy Butler and Tobias Harris.
They got to get rid of Jimmy Butler. Sorry, I like Jimmy Butler. I like his personality to a point, like what he does outside of the game, but the way in which he plays, he's almost like this generation's Carmelo Anthony. You can't have this fluid team of being able to play high and low, and then you come in and you become the black hole. And it's ISO versus team. Like, it's just that style of ball is just not getting it done anymore.
Ben Simmons and Tobias Harris for Anthony Davis. And then trade Jimmy Butler and draft picks to the Denver Nuggets for either Gary Harris or Jamal Murray.
Ooh, that's spicy.
So now you got a point guard like Jamal Murray who can score but also can facilitate, or a ball handler like Gary Harris, and then you play with you play with Embiid and Anthony Davis, because Anthony Davis and Simmons could play together because Anthony Davis could play the 4.
I like it, but I don't like it in the locker room. You get what I'm saying?
I do get what you're saying. I also think that's an interesting conversation that we're going to have right now. We're going to have on the other side, we're going to talk about locker rooms in the NBA, because I do think that right now it's pretty crazy. We're talking about the last 8 teams in the league. I would say only 4 of these 8 teams actually have good locker rooms. I want to know why. Tutel Nuanez.
Les Schwab is proud to introduce 2 of our best tires ever just in time for summer. There's our exclusive open range AT that we believe is our quietest, smoothest, and best all-season traction tire ever, or the Reputation, our exclusive high-mileage premium passenger tire. Get $50 off alignment when you purchase a set of 4 open range AT or Reputation tires. Book an appointment today at leschwab.com. Les Schwab Tires. Doing the right thing matters. Cannot be combined with other offers. Limited time only. See details at leschwab.com.
On Russell, across from the fairgrounds.
No matter how far you may go, there's always one just down the road. Town Pump, who pump it up.
When you're thirsty, Town Pump has your back. Stop in today for Miller and Coors 18-pack cans for $16.99. We've also got 5-hour energy shots, 2 for $5. Town Pump Food Stores, proud to be part of our community.
Town Pump, right down the road. Pump it up. Oh, yeah.
Alpine Touch is legendary around the state of Montana for providing delicious seasonings for every grilling occasion. Now, Alpine Touch offers so much more, from a savory new barbecue sauce to spicy pepper blends to tasty barbecue rubs. In addition to the classic, Alpine Touch has a variety of seasoning salts for whatever you need to spice up. Now that the holidays are over, Alpine Touch makes a perfect thank you gift to show your friends and relatives you love them. Alpine Touch, available at retail locations around Montana or online at alpinetouch.com. Alpine Touch, Montana's special spice.
It's a crisp fall morning. Time for your daily pumpkin soy latte. As you wait for your coffee, you get a buzz. No, it's not your boss wanting extra whipped cream, but your ADT video doorbell. It's a package. Your new latte machine. No more $5 PSLs. Barista service. Brought to you by ADT. Designing and installing a smart home just for you. Backed by best-in-class 24/7 protection. Learn more at ADT.com. ADT. Real protection. License information available at ADT.com.
Hey folks, Ryan Tutel here, and I'm with Josh of the Advocates Injury Attorneys. Josh, what are people left dealing with after an accident?
Well, quite a few things, actually. We see people that are in pain. They still need to get to work. They need to raise their kids, and now they have to take time to go see doctors and other healthcare providers. They're frustrated with working with the insurance companies and getting the runaround. We'll take on the burden of dealing with the insurance companies so you can get the best settlement possible and get back to your life.
Find your advocate online at montanaadvocates.com. There are a lot of lawyers. You deserve an advocate.
If it matters to Missoula, it matters to us. Ryan Tutel and Colter Nuanez on 102.9 ESPN Radio.
They always say congratulations. Work so hard, forgot how to vacation. They ain't never had the dedication.
Tutel and Nuanez, live on the stream at 1029ESPN.com. The stream is available thanks to Opportunity Bank, your local bank, your opportunity. Now for the Kurtz Polaris studio, here is Ryan Tutel and Colter Nuanez.
You like Post Malone?
Dude, I'm starting to get into him, man.
Me too. I used to not, and now I'm kind of into it.
I'm kind of into him. And then when I saw the Spider-Verse, that movie, and the song that came out for that movie, I heard what my man's trying to do. I heard what he was trying to say in that song, and ever since then, I've been listening a little bit more of my man P. Malone.
Are you following like the new rap scene? Are you into all this?
You know, I'm starting to like, because some of it is actually getting good. Some of it is actually good. For a while, man, I couldn't listen because it was just garbage. Just
Cash Money Millionaires.
Garbage. So yeah, I'm Post. I like. I'm a big Lupe Fiasco fan.
Okay.
You know, like newer genre guys that are like 20 years my junior.
Yeah.
No, I like some of those guys. J. Cole. Yeah, that's good stuff.
Tutel Nuanez, 129 ESPN Missoula, broadcasting to you live. Kurtz Polaris Studios. Kurtz Polaris, 2904 West Broadway here in Missoula, or Highway 83 in Sealy. Check them out at kurtzpolaris.com. If you missed anything in the show, you can check it out on the podcast. Podcast is available on the TuneIn radio app or on iTunes, or you can find it on Spotify. You can also find it at the station website, 1029ESPN.com. Podcast is available thanks to the Wingate by Wyndham Hotel. It's so funny because we have so many similar tastes and influences, and usually we play this in with either some Rick James, some funk music, but also a lot of times we use a little Eric B. and Rakim.
Oh, bring it.
Paid in Full.
Microphone Fiend. Let's go.
Some of those intellectual rappers of the late 80s, I know, are both big influences for us, but also then, the gangster rappers and the Brooklyn rappers of the 90s. You got to be a big Nas guy, right? Being from
Big Nas,
right?
Big Nas, and I was a Big Nas, big Biggie fan.
Yep. So you're an East Coast guy. So we're okay. Next week I'm making Regime come in here. We're gonna do an East Coast West Coast because I was a huge Death Row guy. Guy that grew up down the street from me, 6 years older than me, but he moved down the street from L.A. and I was just indoctrinated with Death Row Records when I was a kid.
Oh, son, I have an idea for next March Madness.
Oh,
you can go East Coast, West Coast, 64.
Let's go.
Let's do it.
I'm into it.
I love it.
Okay, so that'll be fun. Tease next week. Regime Seabrook and Colter Nuanez breaking down the East Coast, West Coast rap battles in the 90s. But I agree. So then I think the hip hop and specifically just straight up rap, because rap and hip hop to me, hip hop is more of a lifestyle and a broad genre, whereas like there's very different versions of rap, but rap and hip hop are a little bit different. And it's gotten so muddied as hip hop has become so much more pop culture.
It should be hip hop.
Right. And so after, to me, the breaking point came. So many people don't even know that Outkast was a phenomenal rap group in the 90s. They only think about Speaker Box and The Love Below as this multicultural, multi-genre album, but that thing broke the bank.
Aquemini, son.
Exactly.
Aquemini.
AT Aliens. Let's go. But
Southern Playalistic.
Exactly.
Let's go.
But these guys, that so Speaker Box Love Below broke the mold, right?
Mm-hmm.
All of a sudden, it's crossover. It's on the radio everywhere, including Montana. Miss Jackson and Hey Ya were probably the first two rap songs ever played in Missoula, Montana on the radio.
I don't know about that. But.
I mean, I don't. Growing up in Missoula, I don't ever remember hearing rap on the radio anywhere until Outkast in the late '90s, early 2000s. Regardless, that's a great moment, great pinnacle moment. But then it crossed over into hip hop becoming hip hop, right?
Absolutely, oh God.
And then all of a sudden you got
Chingy,
Cash Money Millionaires, and then all of a sudden you got Chingy, and then all of a sudden you got Nelly, which is actually pretty good, but like softened it for everybody. And then all of a sudden you just have this proliferation of all this rap that was all about the same stuff.
Yeah.
And it was just all about irrelevant stuff. Rap music was so culturally impactful and so educational.
Yeah.
In the late 80s, early 90s, and then it became so diluted. But now the point is that I think it's coming back
There's
around.
a reverberation.
Post Malone,
absolutely.
Post Malone's decently deep, but like J. Cole, Kendrick Lamar.
Strong brother.
I mean, Travis Scott to a certain extent. I mean, these guys are actually talking about some good stuff now.
Again, it's about time.
Do you know about Joyner Lucas?
Oh, yeah. My youngest brother, who's only 29.
Joyner Lucas is sweet, man.
He's trying to turn me on to that right now.
Yeah, no doubt. It's definitely interesting. We only got 2 minutes left, but just quickly, 60 seconds. NBA locker rooms, so interesting because like what you just said, the Sixers, no matter how far they advance, they got a locker room problem.
Yeah,
I would say the Celtics, who are just in the Eastern Conference semifinals, got a locker room problem.
Absolutely.
The Raptors, it's hard to gauge that team, but they seem like they're all right. The Blazers certainly seem like they get along. The Nuggets certainly seem like they get along. Seems like the Rockets and the Warriors have all sorts of tumult as well, even if it's not maybe internal, all sorts of external drama and all that. Why? What is wrong with people in society, but also just in the NBA? It seems like there's so much entitlement and so much selfishness.
Egos, man. Ego, pride, personas, but also just being at the pinnacle of competition, being the best of the best, surrounded by the best of the best, playing against the best of the best. There's just a lot of environmental stressors that come about that turn any locker room upside down. I mean, including middle school locker rooms. You know, it's just locker rooms are locker rooms are locker rooms, man. You either have a team that can roll in and you have those guys and you have your dudes, or you got a room full of dudes and everything is dysfunctional. And some of those remaining teams, there are some levels of dysfunction. When I look at, I'll take Golden State. The problem is their big four have such polarizing and opposite nature personalities that it automatically makes it dysfunctional from the outside looking in, not necessarily the inverse or the opposite. So I don't know, man. It's just that, and there's just a lot of immaturity. Guys just not maturing. That's what happens when you don't go to college.
That's right. Next week, we'll talk all about it. Thanks for being with us this week. Tutel Nuanez, Razim Seabrook, Colter Nuanez.
Canyon River Golf Club is a must for any golfer in western Montana. Tucked away in a spectacular setting along the Clark Fork River in East Missoula, Canyon River offers one of Montana's best championship golf experiences. And Canyon River is happy to announce their new fleet of golf carts, which include the Shark Experience, an